Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live Indianapolis This Week. We just wrapped up recording for our big Sunday show. We're talking, of course, about the Iowa caucuses. Last night was a huge night, of course, the big Republican debate, -1. No Donald Trump. He held his own event just a few blocks away there in Des Moines. So more than happy to talk with you about the ongoing presidential race right now ahead of the Iowa caucuses. Before moving here to RTV 6, I had spent almost a decade living in Iowa and covering politics out there. So it's fun to see everyone back in Iowa, the excitement that builds to Monday night. One of the quirky things about the caucuses is, for both Republicans and Democrats across about 1,700 precincts, the doors close sharply at 7 o'clock. So if you are not in your precinct right at 7 o'clock, you're out. I printed off some updated poll numbers here as well. We were just talking about this with our political insiders. Feel free to fire off any questions you have as we do this. On the Republican side of things, this is from RealClearPolitics.com. What they do, they take all the different polls that are out there and they average them all together. So it's a much bigger sample size than you'll get in a typical poll. So you've got NBC, the Wall Street Journal, Monmouth, Quinnipiac University, Fox News as well. All their polls are right there. And today, on Friday, just a couple days to the caucuses, Donald Trump with a 7-point lead. Going into Monday there, Ted Cruz behind him at 24.8%. Marco Rubio, who I thought had a pretty strong night during the debate, 14 points. Ben Carson at 8. Paul at 4. Jeb Bush at 4. Who has 100% support, though? Kevin Gregory.
No, so I heard you say polls close at 7.
Well, right at 7, you have to be in the room, and they close the doors on you.
So when they come out, there may be some snow
there could
on
be
Monday
some snow.
night. But during the day, it'll be in the 30s and dry. See, I'm always thinking weather and politics because we always say it's going to be rainy. Who does that help? It's going to be snowy. Who does that help?
The fun thing to watch, Kevin, is all these people obviously go to Iowa for the caucuses, and it's a huge deal. It's a huge media event. Everyone's out there. And then Tuesday morning, everyone leaves Iowa, which is really too bad because Iowa's fantastic. It'll be fun to watch, though, because Iowa, I think, is supposed to get a big snowstorm possibly Tuesday morning.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So Monday night into Tuesday. So
big mess.
What we were saying is the media, you could be stuck there.
Yeah, and I hope they are because they should really enjoy everything that Iowa has to offer.
I'm going to go back to my corner of the studio. Should I hear something that draws a response, I'm coming right back. I'm coming right back.
He's back in. We had Congresswoman Susan Brooks was here just a few minutes ago when we were talking with her. She's actually headed to the Iowa caucuses. She is going to the funeral for Principal Susan Jordan first on Saturday, and then she will leave on Sunday to head out there. So we've got some questions rolling in here.
First questions, if you want, Jason, coming in, said, do you think it hurt Donald Trump not being at last night's debate?
Okay, here's my Donald Trump answer on him not being at the debate last night. He was just a few blocks away. No one knows, because anytime he has done something unconventional or surprising or sometimes controversial to a lot of folks, his poll numbers haven't really been impacted. Sometimes they've ticked upwards, so I haven't seen any poll numbers come out since last night and his veterans event there, but we'll wait and find out what happens. Hello, hi, good to see you all. Didn't hurt Ronald Reagan. James, good to see you. Casey, good to see you. Casey, yeah, we might all be the best of friends. That's fun. And apparently we're pausing a little bit. We'll see if we can tinker that out. Okay, so that's the Republican side of things. On the Democratic side, this is getting really interesting because just a few weeks ago, Bernie Sanders, at least in Iowa, was pretty down in the polls there. Check this out. I'll see if we can get this to the camera. Once again, this is from RealClearPolitics.com. There's the updated number there. Clinton now just up a little more than 2 points in Iowa. And imagine this hypothetical, and we talk about this with our political insiders. If Clinton can't win Iowa, and then Bernie Sanders comes and he's expected to win New Hampshire, from neighboring Vermont there, what do you do then? Barack Obama only won Iowa. He didn't win New Hampshire. That'd be a huge start to Bernie Sanders' campaign. Feel the burn. A lot of the country's feeling the burn. So it'll be really interesting on Monday to see if people who have been so fired up for Bernie Sanders get out and caucus for Bernie Sanders. It'll also be very interesting to see if all the buzz and all the support that Donald Trump has translates into people actually going to caucus for him. Eric's got a question about Indiana polls, where Clinton has ranked. We really haven't had a lot specifically to Indiana. By the way, our phenomenal executive producer Brady Gibson's over here. We're going to pull him in here momentarily because he's hates being in front of the camera, and it's fun to just make him do it. Okay, all right, hold on. We'll rearrange this. We're going to pull this back here. Hi, Manny. Good to see you.
Yes, hi Manny. Thank you for joining us. When you talk about the Indiana numbers, the most recent we had a couple of months ago from Christine Matthews showed Hillary Clinton with a fairly substantial margin, but that was before you'd started to see this surge from Bernie Sanders in Iowa and nationally over the last few weeks. So we haven't had what I'd call a really reliable or an updated poll to say how he's done, how Hillary and Bernie are doing in Indiana in the last few weeks.
Wally's got a question there. What exactly is wrong with Sanders winning the nomination? Well, nothing. If Sanders win the nomination, that's great. What I have also found curious, and this goes to you, Wally, during the Republican debates so far, everyone has talked about we can't have Hillary Clinton winning the White House. No one had really mentioned Bernie Sanders for weeks in these debates. Mm-hmm. Everyone talked about President Barack Obama, talked about Hillary Clinton, and no mention of Bernie Sanders despite his surge in the polls, and he's been doing very well. Last night, for the first time, was the first time that I think I've heard, while I've been in and out, that they started to take some shots at Bernie Sanders. I thought, well, that's got to be a sign of something. So,
well, I think you also look that the more that they can talk about Bernie Sanders, and maybe it helps the Republicans talk about it, it draws more of that discussion and makes people think maybe there's a Hillary Clinton weakness. So it never hurts to do that. We saw a campaign from Senate here in Indiana, Todd Young, where he mentioned Barron Hill and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, a statement that came out 2 weeks ago. It's the first time you'd seen him say Hillary Clinton, the politics of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in a campaign statement. So you see more of that beginning to slide its way into the full discussion.
Deb says Bernie is bad, Hillary is despicable.
So I guess we know which.
Are you choosing from the Republicans then, or maybe you're just sitting it out? Let's vote Dem so my benefits get stripped. So continue to weigh in. This is fun. Feel free to ask any questions. Here's one that I had yesterday. Yesterday morning, I shot a piece with some fourth graders from Beech Grove, and we replicate the Iowa caucuses, and we had a great time in Beech Grove yesterday morning. We were choosing between cheeseburgers, chicken nuggets, and pizza. So you'll see that piece Sunday morning, 8:30 on Indianapolis This Week. And one of the questions that a teacher had was, so with these Iowa caucuses, if you just show up and you're not a registered voter, can you still go into, let's say you're a Republican and you want to get into the Democratic caucus and caucus there, or how does that all work? This is kind of a blurry area because you can actually register as a Republican or as a Democrat at the caucus site. So hypothetically, if you are being less than honest or truthful, you could be a hardcore Trump supporter who goes to caucus for Bernie Sanders if you're trying to pull the rug out from Clinton. So,
and it really is a much different process that we talked about in the show this week than what you're used to in Indiana, where I think it was Dan Parker talking about this, that we're used to you get up, 6 a.m. the polls open, polls close at 6 o'clock. You have that 12-hour period, or even now, the 28 days before to vote early. This is a very specific time that you have to show up to be there, and you have to stay there until that decision is made. So it's not what you're used to, that you walk in, you push the button, and your vote's cast.
We can talk for days about politics. I'm interested in what you've got to say. In your comments there, I believe this is the way that this works. Post who you thought did very well during the Republican debate last night. Even if you're a big Trump supporter, maybe someone still stuck out to you. This morning, as I was driving into work here at RTV 6, I had WIBC on, and Tony Katz had mentioned that he thought Chris Christie had a great debate last night, and that Chris Christie has been the most steady of all the Republican candidates, but he has gotten no uptick in the polls whatsoever. Chris Christie is always just kind of idling. What do we have in that here? The latest numbers
between
on
3 and 6 has been where I think he's been lately.
2.8, and that's Iowa. So, and I had actually been still living in Iowa when Christie first came to campaign, just to explore and feel out the waters and go to the fairgrounds and eat the turkey leg and do the whole thing.
But you have to also, looking at this campaign, steady hasn't always been the thing that's really gotten the attention when you've
no, not at all.
About Donald Trump, and then with Ben Carson and his explosion at one point, Carly Fiorina had that real push to the top. It hasn't been a steady, here's my message, here's what I've talked about all the way through in a traditional sense.
One other thing to watch that I noticed a lot in all the debates so far on both the Republican and Democratic side, it's really a money game. These candidates need cash to go the distance. Hillary Clinton obviously has a huge campaign network. Bernie Sanders has had a big influx of cash with so much early support. So a lot of the Republicans last night were trying to fire up their base, fire up their donors, because you need that cash to keep going. And while Ted Cruz has slid a little in the polls, I thought I saw that he's got 19 million cash on hand right now.
I think he started the year with 16?
16?
To start the year.
So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Chris Christie plans to federally prosecute cannabis in states where it is legal. That's from Bart Buck. Bart, thanks for weighing in.
New question from Michael. Asking, Bernie Sanders has proclaimed unabashedly that he is a socialist. So it's raised eyebrows about his electability. What does this mean to Indiana? I think it raises a bunch of questions when you talk about electability, when you look at a Bernie Sanders or a Donald Trump. The great plans, but let's say one should win the White House. What's the likelihood of what they talk about actually getting through any session of Congress? And you get from both sides this idea that people are frustrated and unhappy with what's happening in Washington. But if you have either of those at the top, does that frustration get even greater? Because all the things they've talked about wanting to do are probably not going to happen. Bernie Sanders is not going to be able to convince Congress, that if it's still Republican, to raise taxes the amount that he talks about raising it. So I think you've got great questions there about what it could mean for Indiana.
For those of you just joining us, we appreciate it. Brady Gibson here, our executive producer and producer of Indianapolis This Week, and I'm the tall, awkward fellow Jason, who you see from time to time on here. So it's a big, exciting night coming up on Monday. I'm super excited to hear from you guys. This is a fun way to chat and communicate and have kind of an open conversation. So ahead of Super Bowl Sunday, next Sunday, who do you think's going to win, Broncos or Panthers?
Listen, I live in Indianapolis. I've been here for a while. I'm smart enough to know that even if I think the Panthers were going to win by 40 points, you don't go in Indianapolis and say Peyton Manning's going to lose a Super Bowl.
What do you think's easier to predict right now? And I'll leave this to you. Do you think it's easier to predict who wins the Iowa caucuses or who wins the Super Bowl? Because it's not. I don't think it's legal to bet anywhere in the U.S. on political races, but overseas you can.
You see that often.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So. Just interesting. I've never done it, but I've looked at the spread just to see what people have looked into there. Colleen's a big fan of the Broncos. Are you a fan of the Broncos or just Peyton Manning, Colleen? Weigh in on there. Other interesting things about the Iowa caucuses.
Let's talk too about the process. When we know generally as we come through an election night, and you've done this in Iowa, when will we know who has won, who is first, who is second? Because that's, again, it's not the traditional what we're used to seeing as far as the voting.
So what you'll have, you've got 1,700 precincts across the whole state, and these precincts can be in a church, in a school gym, in someone's living room. It really depends on, a lot of these precincts are very rural farm communities, so they'll actually have them at someone's home. It's a super fun process. It depends on how quickly they're able to get results in. Now, 4 years ago, I had been in Des Moines, and they were missing some results on the Republican side of things from, I believe it was LeClaire, Iowa. And they didn't have those results because one of the women at a precinct had forgotten to bring the results back, very laid back, and they ended up finding them late that night. So we had results that had come in around 5 in the morning, and then there was a recount, and a lot of people had reported that Mitt Romney had won, and then they came back and Rick Santorum officially won, which goes to show, maybe how much of an impact Iowa can or can't have, depending on.
Huckabee were top.
Right, they were right there. So, super interesting process.
And we have a response from Colleen. I think we see she's a Peyton fan.
Gotcha.
So, question: would you vote for Peyton for president or for governor?
Well, that's a good.
He was available.
He's plenty popular here. Bart wants the Broncos to win. The Panthers look at the Panthers. That's a pretty good looking team.
I see Tamra's also talking about, I wish the Raiders were playing. Here's a question for you, Tamra. Do you wish the Raiders were playing in Oakland? Do you wish they were playing in Los Angeles? Or do you wish they were playing in San Diego? It sounds like all three are still possibilities for that team, with the way the NFL is talking about moving.
Maybe that's what we need. We need some Super Bowl-esque commercials during caucus coverage. Just some real over-the-top things. Let's see. Bernie, a politician who cares about the poor and middle class. That's from Jen. Jen, thanks for weighing in. So if you're just joining us once again, Brady Gibson, our executive producer, and myself, this is Facebook Live, and it's really fun for us to just chat with you. Coming up on the show on Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on RTV6, we have fourth graders from Beech Grove. We're caucusing with them. We have Congresswoman Susan Brooks is here. We're talking with her. She's head of the Iowa caucuses.
We've also been able to talk today to Rick Klein. He's the political director for ABC News, talking about what we can watch for in Iowa on Monday. What actually is a win? Not always finishing first is considered the win. Sometimes the second or the third place is actually the winner of the night. So what does this mean for Bernie Sanders? If Hillary doesn't win in Iowa, if then she doesn't win in New Hampshire, what happens for the campaign at that point? And then for Donald Trump, it's interesting, one of the comments he made to us in the interview, and I really hope you get a chance to see this Sunday, is Donald Trump's own words, there's nothing more that Donald Trump hates more than a loser. So if Donald Trump loses on Monday night, what becomes of that public invincible persona?
Mary weighed in and said that I think I'd rather bet the Super Bowl rather than politics. I think that's
At least you have a good chance of predicting what will happen in the Super Bowl.
Bet, Mary. Interesting to see. So once again, real quick, these are your updated poll numbers, and we'll kind of wrap this up and let you get on with the rest of your day, because I'm sure you have more exciting things to do than hang out with us here. Hillary Clinton in the lead by 2.1 points over Bernie Sanders. Governor O'Malley far down that list. And then on the Republican side of things, Donald Trump right now, the average of all polls from RealClearPolitics.com. Trump's up 7 points on Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, who I think Marco Rubio's highlight during the debate last night was when he actually took that shot at Bernie Sanders and said that Bernie Sanders makes a great candidate for president of Sweden. His pregnant pause before and Sweden was just too short. If he would have strung that out a little bit in the sake of comedy, it works much better than that.
Interesting, too. I think we just had another comment on here. We talked a bit, I think it was Brenda. And Brenda, you're kind of touching on what we talked about earlier, when if Bernie or Donald Trump gets elected, that frustration, that it doesn't matter who gets into office, they're going into a mess. So that frustration that's really pushing a lot of people as to who they support right now. And there's a lot of talk about who's the establishment candidate, not the establishment candidate. You're still going into an established Washington. So when you get there, will anything change? So I think that's a great point that you make. And as you look at it, what's driving a lot of this early discussion, and it's hard to believe we're still talking early discussion. We've been talking about this, I think, for a year already. And the first people to vote won't be for another, 72 hours.
Right. Natasha weighs in, says it's always a mess. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, what we should do, this is just my idea. I think, depending on the outcome of the election, you take all these lawmakers, you take the president-elect, and you send them to one of those, like, ropes courses. You just, a little, like, 2-day leadership retreat. They can all hang out, have lunch together, and then maybe come back to Washington a little refreshed, and teamwork is a little higher on the list of priorities going forward.
Let's see how budget discussions go after trust falls.
Well, thanks so much for joining us here. This is our first little Indianapolis This Week Facebook Live discussion. This has been fun. We are on Twitter all the time at Indy This Week. Brady's on there. I'm on there as well. So if you have any questions, feel free, fire off a tweet to us at Indy This Week. And then we are back here on the air at 8:30 Sunday morning.
8:30 Sunday.
Noon.
If you happen to be at church at 8:30, we're on again at noon. If you're away from home, we're on the RTV6 app at 8:30, and you can see those interviews online at RTV6 app and the IndyChannel.com throughout the afternoon.
Kevin Gregory, anything else to add?
Have a good Monday.
Have a good Monday.
Even though it's Friday.
A few days away. Kevin Gregory needs more coffee, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the news here at 4 o'clock.